Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. And as we go quantum today and step outside of space and time, we will be experiencing higher dimensional frequencies. The Arcturians are higher dimensional beings, and they are here assisting in this shift in consciousness, literally providing us tremendous support in raising our vibration. And my guest today transmits these frequencies as well as frequencies from the other realms and beings that exist in the dimensions. Jean Ang is here with us, back on Quantum Conversations. Jean, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Lauren. It's great to be here, and thanks again for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure and really just a great opportunity to share with your audience and with you in the conversation, everything that's been going on in this sort of cosmic interplay that we're all involved in.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to catch up with you on that. All of our experiences with you are a transmission of frequency that really is something to be experienced. And so we're going to do that in our show today. And before we get there, though, we'll talk about that cosmic interplay. And really, the Arcturians and the healing frequencies that you bring through, and over the time that you've been opening yourself up to these frequencies, more have come to you. Advanced frequencies have come to you. And these are even from star family. And I find that exquisite. And so on a level, a higher dimensional level, share with us your impression, your witnessing of these higher dimensional beings, the Arcturians, Metatron, who are working with you to transmit this energy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting just kind of looking back and like you said, like I had started at a certain point opening myself up more, I guess publicly you could say, to the Arcturian energies and sharing that with like-minded people, just perhaps giving people, even ones who I hadn't contacted, maybe just through exposure to emails or ads or, you know, like our show here, just the opportunity to see that someone else was also contacting spiritual beings, cosmic beings, and that perhaps they had been doing that, but just on a personal level. But just to see that someone else was doing that kind of helps bolster their path. So I started the classes back in the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, basically. And what's interesting is many people know that was the end of a large 26,000-year cycle. And I remember there's an Aztec prophecy that I think it's the beginning of what they call the sixth sun period, you know, starts at 2012 onwards in a new cycle, and that there would be a lot of new healing techniques and modalities that various individuals or people would download. And I think I saw that also. I mean, of course, personally, that was what I experienced, but I noticed that there were a lot of healers who were bringing through new techniques, probably many on your show. And, you know, now we're kind of, you know, 5 or 6 years into that. So there's some type of reflection that we can do, a data of experiences that have happened. And I can share later on as we talk just how it's happened to unfold for me, starting, you know, more at a sort of what I would say local or state level or country level, and then now starting to go to a few other international places, and just to see that there's really a universal awakening to, if you want to call it cosmic consciousness, openness to other spiritual realities or parallel universes or spiritual dimensions. So it's kind of beautiful to see that we're really a universal family.
Yes, and this is the galactic family, the star family energy that we are connecting through with these frequencies as well. And so just to see this here in your own life, in your own, how you started in your local area, and then you worked, I mean, I think I found you in Sedona. That's how I learned of you, and you were away doing some things. And then now you're global, really. You've gone to Europe, and you just got back from Singapore, and you do a lot in Hawaii and other places too. So I just want to congratulate you on your growth of this, and thank you for sharing on the awakening. It is refreshing and encouraging to know that this is happening universally, and it's across our planet. And so the people who are waking up now in those areas and realizing there's more to this than just waking up, going to work, and doing it all over again, that spirituality is a component, they are the next way showers for people in their community. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's interesting to see the different countries, and thank you for that. I'm going to Singapore, which is quite advanced as a country. The areas, land for land is fairly small, but really their technology, their society is quite advanced. They've really, in the last, I would say, 50 or 60 years since their inception as an independent country. It's right at the southern tip of Malaysia. It's not quite an island, but it's sort of at that tip of Malaysia. Really have advanced, and so if any people get a chance to visit there, or maybe they've already visited there, the amount of Westerners visiting Singapore, to me, has been quite phenomenal. When I announced that I was going, a number of people who I hadn't expected here said, my brother or my sister has lived there for 10 years, or I was there. So there's quite a lot of crosstalk and interaction on this global level there. So in some ways it's a gateway to the Asia, one of them. And there is quite an awakening there going on, and I think it reflects also the sort of Asian area in terms of spirituality, cosmic consciousness, and really openness to some of the things we've been talking about, which are a bit avant-garde, I would say, so-called ET consciousness or interdimensional consciousness. So could probably talk more about that, but it's really quite fascinating how universal it is.
Very fascinating indeed. Okay, and so here we are with you bringing forth frequencies from interdimensional beings, higher dimensional beings, ETs as well, and they are here. These frequencies are here to assist us on so many ways. So explain a little bit about what is going on here, Jean. First of all, I do want to say that you were formally trained. You have a PhD in neurobiology from Yale, and here you are living your life in your purpose, listening to your inner guidance, fully on your journey and your path, and now transmitting these frequencies. And that together enables you to bring the frequencies into the body in a way and focus on it. So share with us a little bit about how this happened, that you came into it, and how these frequencies are really assisting in the body with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think, sort of my personal story has been interesting. I think there's some universal principles that might be applicable to, what audience or wherever people have been also working on their spiritual path. I think the term that kind of coming to me is this kind of dynamic spiritual physical tension that sort of we deal with. So we're kind of here in a physical body. We may have impulses that are either quite conscious or semi-conscious or even completely unconscious that are more from our spiritual nature, maybe our higher self. Sometimes we call it our soul plan, or just these interdimensional impulses. And so we're sort of trying to balance that calling with what we're seeing here in our physical vehicle. So for me, I think that was exemplified through this more intellectual, at first, dynamic tension between trying to, stay within academia, particularly science, while also having these very strong spiritual impulses, which kind of translated into a healing impulse. So, I was trying to resolve that by going into more traditional roles in the beginning, whether you call that biomedical science or research, where in essence it is our healing, our current modern healing temple, and trying to resolve that sort of tension, because even though it is sort of our modern healing therapy right now, you could say it's really focused on the physical reality all the way down to the molecular or DNA level. That's kind of the level I was doing my research at. For me, it sort of, I think I went to the, as far as I perhaps needed to go from a soul level, and that was to finish my PhD in neurobiology, and then I did a postdoctoral fellowship on how ultrasound affects the developing brain. But it was interesting because right around that same time I started the postdoctoral fellowship, I started studying with energy healers. And so that was my outlet to, this impulse for healing, which really had started, maybe 20 years ago in college, was starting to actually blossom in a very outward way. And then after my postdoctoral fellowship, which is kind of a completion stage, either you go on to academia, like a assistant professor appointment, or you could go into industry, like in pharmaceuticals. I chose to just go into full-time healing, which I think was more natural to my soul plan. And that was kind of the birth or the start of kind of where I'm here now. Probably, I think that's now about probably about a decade now in terms of doing the full-time healing and just sharing kind of on a teaching level this merging of science and spirituality.
Merging of science and spirituality, indeed. I love how you followed those spiritual impulses. Many people are feeling those impulses, whether we jot them down or write them down. Now, we may not always act on them, but they're always there. And so that is wonderful that you began to go down that road. So again, congratulations on a decade of this full-time healing work and for following your soul plan. Real quick here, when you were doing the DNA level research, in your heart of hearts, did you realize there's something more than just being called junk DNA?
Oh, you mean the other DNA that scientists aren't quite sure what's going on with that? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, exactly, yeah. Maybe for our listeners who aren't geneticists, but yeah, the junk DNA is quite interesting. That I think is a euphemism for what scientists can't quite explain. It's probably the majority of the DNA code that we're not quite sure, what that's doing. Although there's hypotheses and inklings that it's doing some type of major regulatory aspect to, what actually gets read out in terms of proteins, enzymes, and really how we show up in the physical world from our blueprint. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot that's probably there. And it's interesting if you really look at some of the research, and a lot of this DNA, it's spatial in terms of, we kind of look at it sometimes as a code that you read linearly, but the DNA actually folds in a certain manner. And so certain parts, the way they fold spatially, which then links into geometry, which could be of interest to the audience, or just some of the things we study now in terms of spirituality. currently is this, sacred geometry, but how the DNA molecule folds brings in parts of that so-called junk DNA close to areas that actually are read out as proteins or the blueprint for proteins. So they think that's how they might be influencing what actually gets translated or transcribed as proteins. So a lot has to do with the spatial folding, which is very interesting.
Yes, very interesting. And even that is a part of sacred geometry. Yes, it is encoded in that enfolding. Now, let me ask you about activating our DNA. We know that, these energies that you bring through, especially the Arcturian healing energies, and all of them actually, these frequencies are then activating our DNA. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah. I mean, if we were just, kind of coming from a more, the scientific models or sort of realms of looking at things, at least as a hypothesis, what they call that is the epiphenomena, epigenetics, which maybe some people have here on the call might have an interest in just through some of the work of like Bruce Lipton, who's a cell biologist who also then studied a lot of energy healing and actually I think teaches the modality himself, and that's the effects of more subtle influences. Of course, in traditional science right now, they don't quite have the tools to measure accurately or the models the subtle energy, and that's probably why we're right now that's more at the cutting edge, although there are tools starting to come out that will measure this subtle energy. But the idea is that the subtle energy would be an environmental influence, much like our diet or breathing or chemicals, but now on a subtle realm that can influence the different factors that would turn on or turn off genes, and that then leads to the readout of various proteins, or not the readout of proteins, much like certain genes are turned on, and that's why we have brown hair, and other genes are turned on in someone else, and that's why they have blonde hair. But both people have both genes for both blonde and brown hair. It's just that some are turned on and some are silent. So depending on our environment, certain genes are turned on, and now we're including these subtle energies. It's just that in science we would need to be able to prove that within their framework. And so whether that comes in now or in a decade or 20 years, that'll be great to see. But that's sort of our working hypothesis, with energy healers who are familiar with the scientific model, is that the subtle energy would be another environmental influence that could change the expression or the non-expression of certain genes, and of course could lead to health in certain cases.
Okay, very interesting. All right, well, thanks for sharing on that. Okay, so the frequencies that you bring through, you've mentioned they're interdimensional, they're ET, they're higher dimensional. You work with the Arcturians, you work with Metatron, Melchizedek, and these frequencies are being brought forth, and then most of these experiences are silent. We sit and we feel this. So we are working with the subtle energy, and we're going to do a little session for everyone so they can experience this too. But share a little bit more on all of the beings, or first how you came. Did you reach out to the Arcturians, or did it first seem like an energy came to you? And then talk about the other beings that you, the frequencies that you transmit as well.
Yeah, I think as we were kind of building these models, where eventually science might, have the tools and also the interest, that's kind of probably 50-50 in terms of both things coming into play. Some of science, or a lot of science, can tend to be political in terms of what actually gets focused on and funded. So both the tools to look at subtle energy as well as the interest to look at that will come into play. But before we get to that point, or maybe we're in the midst of that, it's good to have a model, even just to understand, like you said, what are we referring to in terms of interdimensional consciousness or beings, and therefore interdimensional frequencies. So I've presented this before, but I'll just go through a really quick rundown, and maybe we can fill in some of these more recent tools that we've actually been using on the online healing retreats and shows, previous shows, and this one. But the one I like to use is called the 7 planes of nature. And this is just a 7-dimensional model where we have the physical body and then the etheric body, which is like our chi or prana, sort of where our acupuncture meridians are running, which are not physical, of course, although they're linked to the physical body. Then after that, you have the emotional body, the mental body, then these higher spiritual bodies, which in this model, the next one is the causal or karmic body, sort of where our cause and effects from this and other lifetimes are stored. Then the spiritual body, which is more of the soul blueprint. And then finally the divine dimension, which is our non-dual dimension where we're unified in consciousness with the all or the Godhead. So when you have that model, you know, of course, it's a little more expansive than just seeing only the physical world as real. You have basically 6 other dimensional states or planes of existence that are within us right now, which our consciousness imbues that we can look at. And that's really kind of where we're looking at or discussing with these interdimensional energies and consciousness. So just to talk about the beings like the Arcturians or Melchizedek, Metatron, or even just if we wanted to make it maybe more familiar to people, angelic beings. So these would be beings independent of our consciousness. That would be kind of key in the model compared to a traditional model. So we're not kind of making them up. If we didn't exist, they would still exist, would be the suggestion in the model. They're existing without a physical body. They could have a physical body. Most of the time I'm interacting with these beings without the expectation that they have a physical vehicle at the time. So they could be existing, let's say, on the emotional, mental level, but without a physical body. And that's kind of where we are interacting with these consciousness. And then they're transmitting an energy or a frequency that will affect our higher dimensional bodies, whether it be, you know, all the way to the divine or spiritual, causal. Maybe more familiar or conscious to us would be the effect on our mental or emotional or etheric body. And then this could translate, if needed or directed, to a physical effect. And so that's the basic model and how the interaction with these interdimensional healing energies and beings would work.
Thank you for explaining that. It's always so beautiful to think of it that way and to be able to wrap our head around it. And so they're non-physical beings, and they transmit energies and frequencies that really do affect all of these bodies. All right, and so in the online healing retreats that we've done, those are really quite extensive. It's just more sessions, longer sessions that really just take us through a whole series of these frequencies, and each session is about 90 minutes, and they just really allow us to come back and integrate those frequencies. And the experiences that people share are, it's very interesting to see how they're very common, and they're the same. There's common threads, and so that's pretty interesting. Okay, well, let's experience a session here. This is where we advise everyone to settle in and allow yourself to feel these frequencies. Jean, why don't you talk a little bit about this, because it's silent. You're going to be silent at times, and this is where we can really tune in a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. You know, our tendency, and mine too, is to focus, of course, on the physical dimension, whether that be physical sounds or, of course, our sight is, for those people who have that capacity, tends to be 70–80% of what we focus on, even when we imagine things. And of course, our kinesthetic or feeling sensation through our hands or feet or skin. The thing about these frequencies is that they actually exist first at these non-physical dimensions that I just mentioned, starting from the etheric and above. So those non-physical dimensions are beyond space-time, even though they can affect our consciousness instantly. So when, for example, I'll say I'm starting the Arcturian Metatron astral device for emotional balancing, it's not that there's anything directly tied to my voice, for example, but it's actually being transmitted directly from either a higher dimensional plane or at least from the emotional mental plane directly to people's emotional or mental bodies. And then people may then feel that in their brain consciousness as a sensation or even an inner tone or lights and colors in their mind's eye. But the connection was actually in a non-physical plane, actually instantly when it started, and then it gets translated into our brain as a sensation. So that's kind of the model in terms of what people are feeling. But you can track my voice. I do try to just tune back in and say kind of what we're doing, and then I'm usually silent to allow that transmission to occur. And what I was thinking, for this maybe first exposure, I'm getting sort of, there are a number of different frequencies now, but the Arcturian Metatron, they're called Arcturian Metatron devices. And this is a kind of a weave between two classes of frequencies or beings. One is Arcturian, which is a bit cosmic or star related, and then Metatron, which that being's considered an archangel who also once was incarnated as a human, but sort of is helping us move along, particularly on the infusion of spiritual energies or light into the physical plane. So the energies you're going to feel are from these two beings or consciousness. And they're directed to different subtle bodies. So what I was thinking is we can experience them on two different bodies or two different planes. One would be first the emotional plane, which many of us are working just to, as our issues arise, or just to balance that or to strengthen that. And then the other one we'll use is the Arcturian Metatron physical device. And there's two frequencies, one's for rejuvenation and another one's for longevity.
Okay, very beautiful. All right, Jean. Well, this is where we go quantum to experience these frequencies. So we will give you that space now. Everyone, let's enjoy.
Okay, great. All right, so the first frequency we're going to use is the Arcturian Metatron astral device for emotional balancing. So this is on the emotional and mental dimension of ourselves. So we're beginning with the Arcturian Metatron astral device for emotional balancing. So if there is anything you are working on the emotional or mental dimension of yourself that you're conscious of, you can intentionally direct or ask these frequencies to work on that. And alternatively, you can just keep the intention open or quantum, meaning it will work wherever it's most needed in your system. And the frequencies work quite quickly, but will allow them to continue to channel for as long as needed. we're continuing to channel the Arcturian Metatron astral device for emotional balancing. And the energies are continuing to run, so we're continuing with the Arcturian Metatron astral device for emotional balancing. Now we're shifting to the Arcturian Metatron physical device for rejuvenation. So rejuvenating on a cellular DNA level, our physical vehicle. And the energy are continuing to run, so we're continuing to expose ourselves in the group to the Arcturian Metatron physical device for rejuvenation. So if you have any physical symptoms or any tiredness, lethargy, or just needing to recover on a physical level, you can set those intentions now. And alternatively, you can just allow the frequencies to work wherever they're most. And now we're running a subset of the Arcturian Metatron physical device, this time for longevity. In particular, this balances our elements in the body, the earth element, water element, fire element, and air, also the space element, and leads to a balanced physical milieu in our body, which also translates into a long life. So we'll continue with the Arcturian Metatron physical device for longevity. Great. And that is completed there. And we'll end the short session here so you can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes.
And that was a bath in those frequencies, which are very subtle, and each of the series, each wave had its own expression, its own feeling, and I just love the rejuvenating one. That was very precious and almost put me to sleep, so I know others are still soaking in those. It's very interesting when we work in these bodies and then to integrate it in our life. I've had dreams personally that they must be clearing dreams or actually creating new timelines, but they're very, very vivid after I do this work.
Yeah. People have various, because there's an intelligence to the frequencies depending on what's being used. They all have a divine kind of intelligence. So I mentioned you can either direct them specifically to things you're working on, or you can have them run in what I call the quantum or open fashion, going where they need to based on your own innate intelligence and the intelligence of the frequencies or energies. So sometimes people have had quite dramatic effects on the physical plane. Like I know one example of one woman who had come for a session that I might have mentioned earlier in another talk, but really kind of the diagnosis was acute thyroiditis. But I didn't really know that. She just said that she had been experiencing some lethargy. And the frequencies had quite a dramatic effect just in that one session. And then later on, I didn't find out until later from her, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. And then even her physician contacted me just to, because he was quite surprised with the results. So it can be quite dramatic like that, or like you said, or it could be more internal or on the other emotional, mental planes, depending on what a person sort of needs to have expressed in their body.
Yes, and again, you have done so much with all of these. Some of the favorites we bring in, you've done a lot with the earth frequency and even the dragon frequency, and you've done a lot with the brain. We did a whole master class on clarity in one of our master classes. That was really wonderful. So this is used in such a variety of ways. I think it really fortifies one's field and allows for movement and progress. And so, again, I love that the physician contacted you because of this work. It's that merging of science and spirituality that will have more cases in point, and yours is one of them, so that's really good. And I know that people have asked if this helps with the brain and everything, so they really are extensive, the variety of how you use these frequencies.
Yeah, we could do some more experiential work here in case people want to also experience the earth regenerative energies that you mentioned. That's very good for regenerating the etheric body and physical body, whether that be because one needs sort of more vitality or energy, or if someone is already feeling pretty good, but they want sort of a boost, whether that be for kind of a peak performance or just to get ready for another surge of work or activity. They can use those energies. And then maybe also we can experience, there are some specific brain or nervous system frequencies, the Arcturian neural net and the Arcturian brain balancing, and those are more specific and helpful on the nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, we can take a few questions, but first let's go over some of the programs that you've got. Again, in your special offer, I do have to say this is quite an exquisite special offer. The online healing retreats that we do, we have a number scheduled throughout this year, live and new ones. So just stay tuned, everyone, for our calendar. We'll send an email out on that. But Jean, you've got your most recent one, which was the Zermatt 7, and this was, it was the lion being energies that came forth, and that was pretty interesting. But then you've got all of these other master classes. You don't have to go through all of them. We'll let our readers, our people read that actually and determine it. But all of these master classes, there's like 7 master classes now, and a bonus, plus some other, you had Mount Shasta transmissions. So all of this is quite a very nice package. So I'll just let you share on that, and then we'll go to some callers.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's quite a library here, which I think was our purpose, in doing the online healing retreats in a systematic fashion, maybe 2 or 3 a year. And so we've really amassed sort of a library for people to, be able to pick and choose or just have these frequencies available to them and their families or friends, so they can also utilize them, really just to help both on a practical level, like I mentioned, healing on a physical or emotional, mental, or spiritual level, but also probably half or even the whole packages are meant to accelerate your consciousness, work on your spiritual or conscious evolution in a systematic way. And so you can always come back. I think what's nice about the MP3s is you can come back and you're not receiving the session like as a repeat. You're actually connecting using the recording as sort of a resonance tuner. People understand the idea of resonance, kind of an exchange of the information fields with the original healing information field. So you're getting really a new session each time you play the MP3. But basically, if people, as they scroll down through these, they can kind of look at the title sort of carries the idea for what the frequency or the purpose is of each package. And what I've tried to do in each of those, and I think as we do some more specific ones here, if people are new to these energies, is utilize the frequencies on these different 7 subtle bodies that I mentioned. So there'll be a use of the frequency usually on the physical etheric level. So if you're experiencing any type of symptoms or any type of physical etheric manifestations, there'll be a session with the unique frequency of that retreat utilized on that level. Then probably another session that will be utilized on the emotional, mental dimension. And then finally a third session that will be utilized on the causal, spiritual, and divine level. So it's meant to utilize each unique package of frequencies to develop in a balanced and systematic way all your subtle bodies, 7 subtle bodies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and they really do. And also one of the beautiful things about those programs is that the actual energetic transmissions were extracted from that program so people can tune in to just those transmissions as well. There's also the version with your explanation of what's going on and people's experiences. Of course, that's helpful. But as people use these and return to them again, as you said, the next time they return to it, they're on that next spiral of evolution where they're receiving the whole new frequency packets and information. And so that helps when people can go just to those energetic transmissions from each of those sessions. And would people be able to use these as they sleep? I would say that sometimes these are going to put us out. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be a great use, maybe even intentional use. Sometimes people will play them either to help them fall asleep and have a deeper sleep, or to play them as they're falling asleep, so that, and even put a loop on it so that they're being exposed to the frequencies as they're, throughout their sleep. So it can be utilized in that way, and that would be just fine, actually, a great way to use them. And then, of course, some people are at another point in time, you might use them when you're more alert, and then you can stay conscious of the changes that are occurring, and that would be like a balance, kind of the complementary way to use them in addition to using them for sleep or during sleep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. All right. So can you talk a little bit about healing ancestral patterns or ancestral karma?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we had a session for that. I'm not sure if you're seeing it somewhere directly, but there is a frequency actually. Let's see, it's actually one of the Arcturian Metatron devices. It's actually the spiritual device that can clear ancestral patterns. So there's kind of two ways to think of ancestral patterning. One is you have your genetic ancestry. That means sort of your bloodline ancestry. So if you were to talk about your grandmother or great-grandfather, in this particular incarnation, then they're part of your bloodline genetics. And of course, we study that on a scientific level. Our DNA is a product of the combination of our ancestors before us, and we're kind of a culmination of that. And so we are affected by that, both on a physical level as well as a subtle body level, because the physical body does influence the other bodies, as well as the other subtle bodies affect the physical. So the use of the spiritual, Arcturian Metatron spiritual device frequencies would also work on effects from this, I call it bloodline ancestry, in case you were trying to balance certain of that expression out in your current life. Then there's also a spiritual ancestry, meaning if you do hold a model of reincarnation, or that you have a subtle consciousness that continues lifetime after lifetime. It doesn't have to be lifetimes necessarily incarnated in the physical world. It could be in another dimensional place. You may have connections, you could call it your soul family, that are part of your ancestry where you're connected to, but not on a physical body level, but more on a consciousness level. And you may be influenced by those connections that were, you could say, in the past, or even parallel or current connections. And so the energies, these ancestral clearings, could be in some ways forgiving or clearing or balancing influences from this more spiritual descent or ancestry that could be influencing us now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Very helpful then. It's amazing to see that, the bloodline affects the so since the DNA, it's in us, the genetics, it's in us, right? And that because it's in the physical, it's going to affect those other planes, the emotional, mental, spiritual. So very, very interesting. Okay, so people can work then with these frequencies to help clear that out and balance it out. Beautiful. Okay. Now, if I go to the phone line, some may ask you to read them, Jean, or to do a healing. Is that something that you would do in this space like that? Are you open for that?
Yeah. Usually what I do is kind of my emphasis, and people can do that, and that would be great. My emphasis is to probably will get some intuition of what frequency within the Arcturian Healing Method sort of, complement of frequencies that would be appropriate, and less about maybe giving straight personal advice. But either way, maybe something will come up also.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because we know from this group we're all so similar, and that it benefits all of us. So we will go to our phone line and we'll take some questions and we'll apply it to our group. All right, so let's go here to Yvonne in Toronto. Hello, Yvonne.
Hi, Jean and Loren. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Good. I also typed in a question. I was just wondering, Jean, you're fabulous, by the way. Your frequencies are amazing.
Thanks.
Is there something that you can do for all of us? Because everything is changing so quickly, and the people like myself who want to help the planet, we want to work more closely with the galactic. We know they're helping us, and I'm one that wants to help from this end, humanity and our planet. Is there something that you can take us through just for sleep time tonight to have a closer connection or something that will help us all?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for the that request, Yvonne.
Yeah.
And I kind of hear and feel the same kind of impulse. And so what came to mind is there's an Arcturian frequency that's in basically the level 7 class. It's in the healing training. It's called Arcturian glow frequency. Actually, it puts people in a flow state, and that's always beneficial to accomplishing their spiritual mission. And that would be helpful to actually play. Also, like you mentioned, I could play this snippet that we're about to do before you sleep or while you sleep, or as kind of a loop. And then Loren also mentioned the Zermatt transmissions, which is actually a different, I perceive them as a different class of cosmic beings, but one of their purposes is to accelerate the evolution of humanity, particularly those people who are working consciously on their soul plan and mission to serve the planet. So there's one in particular, the Zermatt 7, more on the spiritual level, that would be appropriate to that, the request here to kind of accelerate our spiritual mission. Okay, that sound good?
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thanks.
So we're going to experience, that's great. We'll experience these two frequencies. So if people want to just relax and receive. We're starting with the Arcturian glow frequency. We're utilizing the Arcturian glow frequency, which puts you into a flow state of consciousness. Continuing with the Arcturian glow frequency. And we're just relaxing in as the flow frequency continues to work on our 7 subtle bodies. Now we're channeling the Zermatt 7 spiritual transmission to align us with our highest possibilities in our soul or spiritual mission in this lifetime. Continuing with the Zermatt 7 spiritual transmission for alignment with our highest purpose and ideals. And that completes the transmission of those 2 frequencies. And you can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes.
Well, I'm going to open up Yvonne's line and get her reaction to that, and others are able to share their experience too. The first one, what was the first one that you did there, Jean? Before the
It's the Arcturian.
Okay.
Yeah, the glow frequency.
Okay, that one really almost, that just put me into a really soft space. And then, of course, with the Zermatt 7, that one was very interesting, energetic, I felt. But then, towards the end, it was like almost putting me out again. It was very, very subtle. So that's amazing. Let's hear from Yvonne.
Yes, hi. What I felt, the first part was also more peaceful, but then I had tears of joy that I felt. And I'm so grateful because I just feel so much love in my heart right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. Thank you, Yvonne.
I hope everyone feels something beautiful from that. That was beautiful.
Thanks so much, Yvonne, for sharing that.
Yes, that's what they're here to do with these frequencies, is to really open our hearts to love, more love. Thanks for sharing, Yvonne. Okay. All right, well, we have time for at least one more call. This time, let's go to Tacoma, Washington, phone number ending 8271. Hi, you're unmuted. What's your name, please?
Hi, my name is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
And I've enjoyed Jean before, and actually kind of this last experience was just beautiful. But what happened for me, or the question that came up in my mind when you opened up the possibility of questions, is that it's a personal question of I have some severe fatigue and tightness in my legs and feet. And I don't know if it's ascension symptoms or if I have a physical problem that I need to deal with. I don't have clarity. I don't know if Jean could help me get clarity.
Yeah. And thanks for that question, Linda. And yeah, people have been or can and do experience various physical symptoms as their subtle bodies are transforming, so-called labeled the ascension symptoms that you mentioned. Sometimes those can also be caused by other things. And when you mentioned that, what we can experience here is also some frequencies that Lauren had alluded to, which are the Arcturian earth regenerative energies. And those can help with, particularly with physical symptoms and revitalization, even increase in blood flow to different parts of the body. And that would probably help a lot with your the tightness that you're experiencing in your feet, and also may give some clarity that just can come to you in terms of whether that's something you're dealing with in terms of the acceleration in consciousness that you've been working on, or if it's another cause. But sometimes they're very closely related. So what we'll do is yeah, I was just going to say we're going to experience 3 different earth regenerative energies that both for Linda's her legs, as well as people can utilize them in whatever way they feel their purpose is while we're channeling them.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to experience 3 earth regenerative energies. And we're going to start out with the red dragon earth regenerative energies. So we're utilizing the red dragon earth regenerative energies now. And these work specifically on the etheric body to revitalize, regenerate, and strengthen the etheric. Now we're experiencing the Arcturian golden naga earth regenerative energies. So beginning with the Arcturian golden naga earth regenerative energies that have a gold and very balanced flavor to them. continuing with the Arcturian Golden Naga, Earth Regenerative Energies. Finally, we're experiencing the Arcturian Cobalt Blue Earth Regenerative Energies, which have a more yin or cooling quality to the energizing of the etheric body. So we're beginning to utilize the Arcturian Cobalt Blue Earth Regenerative Energies. Continuing with the Arcturian Cobalt Blue Earth Regenerative Energy. And that completes the exposure to the 3 Arcturian Earth Regenerative Energies. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. And when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes.
That was very, very powerful for me, Jean. I'm very grateful. I'm very sensitive to energy, and especially the first and the second one, it was like I really felt the energy, and my arms shook, my body shook, and it was like, and then it went right down into my legs, and my legs shook. And in the third one, everything just quieted, but I can feel a coolness. Just a wonderful, just cool feeling in my legs, and a very, very powerful experience for me. It'll be fun to just experience what all that means as it unfolds further. I offer my gratitude to you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, and thanks for that feedback. And really fits with the kind of the qualities of those energies. The red dragon and the golden naga tend to have a stronger quality to them, particularly the red dragon one. And then and the golden naga is a little more balanced. And then the cobalt blue one is like kind of exactly what you described as a calming effect, although it's still energizing the etheric body.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I'm so glad you called on me. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, exquisite. I loved it. I could feel that all around like my head, the red dragon. And the golden naga was almost just like a sparkly blanket, calming, balancing. Cool. Okay. Well, my goodness, there's more hands raised than we can get to, but I'd like to take one more question. So let's go to Holly in Cambridge. Hi, Holly.
Hi. Thanks for calling on me. My question is, or my issue is, it seems quite intractable long-term health problems. I don't know if you want me to go into detail or if that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, if you feel comfortable, you can say one or two words, if there's a certain system. But if not, it's okay. Also, you can just, yeah.
Well, it's like a really insoluble case of Lyme with sort of really severe systemic inflammation and mold, and then I'm sort of wondering if there's some sort of spiritual or karmic component as well.
And how long have you experienced?
I'm pretty sure I got Lyme in 1982.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the request, and and also for kind of just mentioning one or two things about the specifics. There are some specific immune system frequencies in the Arcturian Healing Method, so that might be appropriate here, particularly with the Lyme. And then, like you mentioned, if it is working also at a higher dimensional level, like a karmic or spiritual level, we can run some frequencies to balance that dimension. Does that sound good?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, great. And for everyone else on the call, you can utilize these frequencies, the immune system one, also the karmic one, in whatever way you choose, either specifically or in the open fashion. Okay, so we're going to begin with it's called the Arcturian Super Immune Booster Healing Frequency. So we're beginning with the Arcturian Super Immune Booster Healing Frequency, both specifically for Holly's request as well as for everyone who's listening to this call. Continuing with the Arcturian Superimmune Booster Healing Frequency. Now we're utilizing the Arcturian Metatron causal device for karmic balancing. continuing the exposure to the Arcturian Metatron causal device for karmic balancing. And that completes the exposure of those two frequencies. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes.
Wow, thank you for that, Jean. Amazing. Okay. These frequencies, they are so, they're subtle and potent. The super immune buster was really cool. That was quite energizing for me. But then this the cosmic device for karmic balance, that like opened my sinuses. Totally different. So anyway, that was very cool. Let's check in real quick here with Holly.
Yeah, I felt with both of them a very strong stream of energy, from sort of skyward down to my Kundalini channel, which is very, I don't know, pleasant, I guess, but also very, very powerful. So that was amazing.
Oh, great. And also just a note, I know Lyme's disease is a bit, the immune system may be very active in a sense. So sometimes people ask me if the immune booster frequency is actually going to boost the immune system, but what it does is it balances the system as the person needs it, whatever their condition is. So in case there's like a person also on this call who's utilizing that frequency for an autoimmune disorder, it wouldn't create more activity in the immune system. It would more balance it out so that it wouldn't be attacking your own system. I just wanted to note that for people who might have that question arise.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful.
Yeah,
yes.
Thanks, Holly.
Jean, that is really wonderful. Okay, well, I just want to say that you, our listeners and our community, can experience all of these frequencies and so much more. The special offer page actually has each of those master classes available for purchase singly, individually in the series, or again, we've got it bundled in a very nice package so someone could really do a lot of work with these frequencies. It really is a large body of work. I think it was 2 years of these frequencies as they were developed. So I just want to thank you for that again. And let's see, anything else you'd like to say, Jean, as we close our circle today?
Oh, no, I think this has been great to continue to interact with the greater community, to just exchange energy and information so that people can continue on their path, knowing that there is a community, a greater community out there, whether you consciously are able to connect, which is great, but also that are in the field doing the same thing, supporting each other through resonance. It may be silent and unknown, but it's great to know that we're all helping each other along the way.
Yes, beautiful. Well, your frequencies are felt by people all around the world, and the benefits that are shared are reported, really interesting things on the spiritual level, emotional level, and the physical level. So it's only just a matter of time as more of the traditional current Western medical model comes in and verifies some of the work that you've done, as it's already beginning to happen with their patients who interface with you. So thank you for that, Jean. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Yeah, and it's great to see sometimes when there's sort of this cutting edge modalities, what you see is what hitting mainstream is things that are very helpful, but maybe 10 or 20 years ago, weren't really looked at. So, for example, how mindfulness-based stress reduction or meditation, which wasn't looked by science, looked at seriously and in depth 10 or 20 years ago, now is quite a hot topic, both in science as well as business, Silicon Valley, the military, and so we kind of push the front, and then maybe in the middle we're actually making a lot of leeway.
Isn't that beautiful? I really do love that. Thank you for assisting in that leeway and the bridge of science and spirituality by living it and walking it in your own life. Beautiful. Jean Ang, thank you for this quantum conversation.
Oh, thanks, Lauren. Thanks so much, and thanks, everyone.
And again, Jean's special offer is available on this webpage, and we invite you to join us for the next online healing retreat as well. So thank you. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this program, please share it with your friends and loved ones. And we thank you for shining your magnificent light and adding it to the world. This is when we love ourselves like no one else can. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.